Ever get the feeling some people are almost destined for a certain path? Like their life story was, I don't know, maybe tailor-made for one of our deep dives.
You say we've got another good one?
Oh, this one's a doozy. Buckle up, because we're heading to Brazil to unpack the life of Yvonne do Amaral Pereira.
Hmm. Yvonne do Amaral Pereira. That name rings a bell.
Maybe you've come across her in your Spiritist readings.
Could be. Refresh my memory, though.
Well, a listener sent in this fascinating article on her from the Portuguese Wikipedia, and let me tell you, this woman's life is anything but ordinary. Even for a deep dive, this one's got it all.
All right, you've piqued my curiosity. Lay it on me. Who was this Yvonne?
Born in Rio de Janeiro in 1900, she became a huge E-name in Brazilian Spiritism. I mean, we're talking prolific author, renowned medium, the whole nine yards.
Wow. Okay, now it's coming back to me. Pereira, the psychograph novels, right? I'd love to hear more about her.
Psychograph novels is just the tip of the iceberg, but you're right, that's a big part of her story. And those novels, they're not your average beach reads. We're talking explorations of suicide, reincarnation, social injustice, heavy stuff.
Right, because you can't really separate the woman from her context, can you? We have to talk about Spiritism in Brazil. Sure. It's huge EE there. Yeah. Not just a fringe belief, it's woven into the fabric of their culture.
You're telling me... Okay, so for listeners who aren't familiar, give us a little Spiritism 101. What are we talking about here?
Imagine a blend of Christian morals, reincarnation, and the ability to communicate with spirits. It's been a major force in Brazil for over a century, influencing everything from literature to social work.
Okay, so we've got the backdrop. Now picture baby Yvonne at just 29 days old. Imagine the family's going through every parent's worst nightmare. She has this awful coughing fit, stops breathing. The doctor even declares her dead.
Oh, wow. I can't imagine what her parents must have been going through to have it end like that so suddenly.
Right out of a movie. So they're preparing for her funeral, dressing her in this little white and blue dress with a tiny wreath. I mean, talk about heartbreaking.
Oh, no. And then what?
Well, that's when things take a turn. Her mother, understandably distraught, goes off to pray. She comes back, and guess what? Yvonne is alive and crying. It's like this brush with death unlocked something in her. Because from that moment on, her life takes this incredible turn.
Wow. So they literally thought they lost her, only to have her come back. That's wild. It does make you wonder if that event was some kind of catalyst, like it opened a door to the spiritual realm.
And boy, did that door swing wide open. Because as a child, Yvonne starts seeing and talking to spirits, even calling them her invisible friends.
I mean, lots of kids have imaginary friends, right?
Right.
But something tells me these weren't your average playmates.
Not even close. She was convinced these spirits were connected to her past life, specifically two figures. Charles, who she believed to be her father in this previous life, and Roberto de Caneljas, a 19th century Spanish doctor.
A past life in Spain. Now, this is where it gets interesting.
It gets even more interesting, trust me. She doesn't just mention these figures in passing. She claims to have vivid memories of this past life in Spain. And we're not talking just vague feelings or snippets. We're talking longing for this past life, yearning for it throughout her childhood.
Hold on. So she has this near-death experience, starts talking to spirits, and believes she remembers a whole other life in Spain. It sounds like she was practically living in the spirit world already.
And that, my friend, is the foundation for what she dedicated her life to, helping others through mediumship.
We're talking full-on dedicating her life to using those connections to help others.
In what way?
Oh, we're talking about some serious mediumship here. And one of the ways she used this gift was through something called psychography. You familiar with this?
Now, psychography is essentially channeling messages from spirits through writing, right? Like, she'd be the conduit for those who had passed on to communicate their thoughts and stories. Exactly. It's like taking dictation, but from the other side. And this is the method behind her incredibly prolific writing career.
Right. We can't forget she was incredibly prolific. We'll dive into her novels, I'm sure. But Yvonne also was known for using her connection to the spirit world to help people in a bunch of other ways, too.
Oh, absolutely. Like, she was basically running a spiritual help center out of, well, wherever she happened to be.
It really makes you think about the possibilities, you know. If we could tap into that realm and communicate with those who passed on. So alongside the writing, what else did she do?
Well, word got around that Yvonne had a knack for providing homeopathic prescriptions.
Okay, so we're talking natural remedies, tinctures, that kind of thing.
You could say that, but here's the thing. These prescriptions, they weren't based on your typical medical textbook.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Yeah.
She believed she was getting guidance directly from the source.
It was bingo. Spirits were literally whispering the recipes in her ear, so to speak. Can you imagine that? Someone coming to you with an ailment and you're all, hold on, let me consult with the spirit of, like, Hippocrates real quick.
Talk about a holistic approach. I bet people were lining up to see her. Did it work?
Well, that's a story for another deep dive, but hold on, we're not done yet. She didn't stop at homeopathic prescriptions. Yvonne also worked with people experiencing what in Spiritism is called obsession.
Now, when we say obsession in everyday conversation, it doesn't quite have the same connotation as it does in the context of Spiritism.
Right. We're not talking about your typical pop song stuck in your head kind of obsession. In Spiritism, it's a bit more intense.
More like being under the influence of a negative spiritual presence, almost. Some might call it a form of spiritual attachment.
Exactly. And it wasn't just a passing interest for her either. Yvonne felt a deep responsibility, a calling to aid those who were dealing with this. It really showed her compassion.
I mean, we've talked about her seeing spirits since she was a child, having those intense experiences. It makes sense that she'd be drawn to helping those who are also grappling with that unseen world, especially if they were struggling.
And here's where we see her independent streak emerging. Because despite being deeply involved in the Spiritist movement, Yvonne wasn't afraid to challenge the status quo.
Really, like what did she butt heads with?
Well, she was very vocal about what she saw as needless bureaucracy within Spiritist centers. She wanted things to be more about helping people, less about rules and regulations.
So she was a bit of a maverick then, not afraid to shake things up a bit for the greater good.
Exactly. But here's a curveball for you. On top of all this, she had a passion for Esperanto. Remember Esperanto?
Wait, Esperanto, as in that constructed language created to be a universal language. What's the connection there?
It's not as random as it sounds. For Yvonne, Esperanto wasn't just a hobby. It reflected her deep desire to connect with people from all walks of life, regardless of their background.
I see. Kind of breaking down barriers, finding common ground through language. A noble goal. And very much in line with the whole Spiritist ethos of universal love and brotherhood.
Absolutely. And this commitment to connection, to understanding different perspectives, it ultimately shines through in her writing as well. Before the break, we were talking about Yvonne's passion for Esperanto and how that connected to her broader worldview. It's a fascinating detail, but I'm eager to dive into her literary work. Over 20 psychographed novels. That's a whole other level of prolific.
It's impressive, to say the least, especially considering Yvonne had only a basic formal education. She was largely self-taught, absorbing knowledge like a sponge. Think Goethe, classic Brazilian literature, even a bit of Arthur Conan Doyle, all while working as a seamstress to support herself and her family. It speaks volumes about her dedication and drive.
Imagine those late nights, hunched over a sewing machine, then transitioning to channeling spirits through writing. This wasn't some side hustle, it was a calling. So where do we even begin with this massive body of work?
Well, one of the most renowned titles, and one that offers a window into both Yvonne's beliefs and her ability to craft a captivating narrative, is Memorias de Suicida, which translates to Memoirs of a Suicide.
Okay, that title alone is enough to pique anyone's interest. And you mentioned earlier it was attributed to two spirits. Tell me more.
This is where it gets really intriguing. Yvonne claimed this book came through both Camilo Castelo Branco, a famous Portuguese author who had his own tragic life story, and Leon Denis, a leading figure in the French Spiritist movement.
Now, knowing this was channeled through a medium and co-authored, so to speak, by spirits, does the content itself reflect those Spiritist beliefs?
Absolutely. It's a profound exploration of suicide, but not in a preachy way. It delves into the spiritual ramifications, describing the suffering experienced in the afterlife and the arduous journey back to a state of peace and understanding.
So, for those unfamiliar with Spiritism, this book offers a glimpse into their beliefs about what happens after we die, specifically after such a significant choice.
Precisely. It's divided into three parts. The first, focusing on the immediate struggles in the afterlife, and the following two, detailing spiritual assistance and the process of preparing for reincarnation.
That's heavy stuff. I can see why it resonated within the Spiritist community and beyond, but Memoirs of a Suicide was just one story in her vast repertoire, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yvonne didn't shy away from tackling complex themes. She explored love, loss, betrayal, social injustice, all through this unique lens of Spiritism. For instance, there's Amor y Odio, meaning love and hate, which centers around a student of Allan Kardec himself.
Wow, Allan Kardec, he's considered the founder of Spiritism, right? Talk about getting to the source.
Exactly. And then there's a Tragedia de Santa Maria, or the Tragedy of Santa Maria.
Yeah.
This one hits particularly close to home as it's set in 19th century Brazil on a coffee plantation. It delves into the lives of a wealthy slave-owning family and the tragedy that befalls them.
It's like she's using these stories to explore the ramifications of actions, both individual and societal, through this lens of karma and reincarnation.
And what's striking is that it's attributed to the spirit of Bezerra de Menezes. Now, in the world of Brazilian Spiritism, this figure is deeply revered for his dedication to healing and social justice.
Okay, so we're seeing a pattern here. Yvonne isn't just writing romance novels with a spiritual twist. She's tapping into figures like Bezerra de Menezes to explore the painful legacy of slavery and its karmic implications. It's social commentary interwoven with spiritual teachings.
And it's that blend of engaging storytelling and thought-provoking exploration of complex themes that makes Yvonne's work so compelling, even today. She invites us to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world around us, offering a framework for understanding suffering, redemption, and the cyclical nature of life and death.
It's like she's saying, look, this is what we're capable of, for better or worse, and this is how our choices echo through lifetimes. It's a lot to unpack. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, there's one more crucial aspect of Yvonne's life we need to discuss: her lasting impact and what made her a true pioneer in her own right.
And that, my friend, is a story best saved for after a brief interlude.
So we've really gone deep into Yvonne's extraordinary life, haven't we? Her dedication to helping others through mediumship, that massive collection of psychograph novels, and how she challenged the Spiritist community to walk the walk. But we haven't talked about what kind of impact her life had and how she's remembered today, especially since she passed away back in 1984.
Well, she's often called the silent heroine of Spiritism.
Silent heroine, that's a powerful phrase. Where'd that come from?
The Spiritist researcher, Augusto Marques de Freitas, he coined that phrase, and I think it really captures her legacy.
Because she was humble, not looking for the spotlight.
Exactly. Yvonne wasn't out there chasing fame or recognition. She believed in Spiritism's power to heal, to teach, and to provide hope, and that drove everything she did, from those childhood visions to her work as a medium and an author.
It's like this deep-seated need to share what she believed had been revealed to her, but always quietly, behind the scenes, guided by her connection to the spirit world.
And that genuine desire to help others is something that still resonates with people even today. Her books aren't just about the afterlife. They're about being accountable for your actions, showing compassion, and always trying to better yourself. Yvonne's work speaks to the human experience in a way that transcends time and cultural boundaries.
It's like she took these complex spiritual concepts and made them relatable through stories, so they're relevant even to those who might not know a thing about Spiritism.
Exactly, which speaks to her talent as a writer, of course, but also to the enduring power of those core human needs. The need to understand where we fit in the grand scheme of things, to find meaning in suffering, and to believe that there's something more beyond this life.
It really makes you wonder. Here she was, a woman with minimal formal education, yet she produced this huge body of work that still captivates people today. Was it really spirits communicating through her like she believed? Or was it something else entirely? Maybe a combination of a vivid imagination fueled by her life experiences and all the reading she did. Guess we'll never know for sure. And that's the beauty of Yvonne's story, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's a story full of mystery and wonder, and it pushes us to consider the mysteries of consciousness, creativity, and maybe even the very nature of reality itself.
It really is. And for our listeners, if this deep dive into Yvonne Pereira's life has piqued your interest, why not explore further? Seek out her books, learn about Brazilian Spiritism, maybe even start your own journey of exploration and discovery. After all, as we've seen with Yvonne, sometimes it's those unanswered questions that lead to the most fascinating journeys.